Let us continue to explore the world of dragons. In the last video, we looked at a famous Sicilian trap in the Sicilian defense. In this one, we shall be taking a look at two miniature games, two extremely aggressive miniature games that just represents the attacking potential of the Sicilian dragon. So let's get started. White starts the game with e4. It's a very logical move, controls the center squares. Black responds with c5, and this is known as a Sicilian defense. The whole point is Black controls the center square with a flank pawn, which means this is not a center pawn. And the idea of this is after knight to f3, Black plays d6. The whole point is Black wants to gain control, absolute control over the dark squares. So he would very much like to continue this with knight to c6, g6, bishop to g7, and gain extreme amount of control over this dark square. So that will give him a very powerful grip in the center. White generally does not allow this and play d4. This is known as the open Sicilian. So black on the other hand will be very happy and he will capture because this is a center pawn. We have traded a flank pawn for a center pawn, and there are ups and downs for this. White gets a beautiful centralized knight, whereas black on the other hand gets a pawn majority on the king side as compared to white. So you can see there is 5 against 4. Also black has two center pawns as compared to white's single pawn in the center. So this is a static advantage, a long-term advantage for black. So black now plays knight to f6, attacking the pawn in the center. White plays knight to c3. It's the most common move. It develops a piece and protects the pawn in the center. And black here goes g6. So this move represents the dragon. It's the move that represents the dragon. Black side is very simple. He wants to play bishop to g7, followed by castling on the king side, and the bishop on g7 will not only be a defensive piece but also be an extremely powerful attacking piece. It will probably be black's most powerful piece that will breathe fire across this board and will cut down the board in half. So let's take a look at this. White plays bishop to e3. Again, if you can go back, white has various ways to play. He can play bishop e2, bishop e3. That's the classical setup. But that's not really the main challenge. The main challenge is here when he plays bishop to e3. This is the Yugoslav setup. Basically, white is going to play f3, queen d2, castle long, and go for g4, h4, h5 idea. This is like a caveman style of attack, a very direct attack on the black king, and this is the most challenging setup for black. It's very difficult to play against this setup. Black has to be very accurate as well as white. So this is like one of the most sharpest openings in chess. So black plays bishop to g7, developing the bishop. f3 gives a protection to the center pawn on e4, also controls the g4 square, so it stops any kind of knight g4 or bishop to g4 move. Pardon me. Yeah, it stops bishop g4 or knight g4. So now we continue with knight to c6. So knight develops on a very good square, puts pressure in the center. White plays queen to d2. The idea of this can be in the future we would very much like to play bishop h6 and try to exchange the powerful dragon bishop. If we can get that, then white has very much reduced black's attacking potential. But let's take a look at what happens next. Black now castles. Obviously bishop h6 is not possible directly. For example, if you go bishop h6, the problem is I'm gonna take that, and after queen takes, the knight in the center is hanging, and that's the reason this is not directly available. White generally plays white has three different moves here. He can either go castles. This is one of the best ways to play. There's also bishop to c4, which is designed against black playing d4. And there's one more way which happened in this game, and that is to play g4. The point is, if you can look at black's structure, he's nearly developed except the bishop and the queen. All of his pieces are very well placed, they're developed, and black would very much like to break free with d5. But this is the point where you see the idea of playing g4. White can now play g5, attack the knight, and when the knight moves, we shall take the pawn in center. And that was the whole point of the g4 idea. And that's the reason after g4, black is not able to free himself with d5 and has to play something else. Black's best move here is to play bishop to e6. And this is a very nice move. So black has developed all of his pieces. His queen is going to find a excellent square on c5. Knight is going to e5, and we shall soon start an tactical operation. And you do not really have to worry about the knight capturing the bishop. For example, knight takes bishop is really happy news for good news for black, because once we take, there are a few things that have happened here. First of all, we have got a nice clump of pawns in the center. The pawn on e6 controls the d5 square. We have a powerful grip on the d5 square. And the main part is, one of the weaknesses of playing g4 is that the f3 pawn is weak, and this is very well exploited after this exchange. Now our rook is opened up, and this can give us some excellent counter chances. Also, one of the important things is, now when the attack comes, black can easily escape via f7 square, so the attack is not going to be as severe. So this is really good for black, and white does not really capture on e6. Rather, after bishop to e6, he goes ahead and castles. And now black plays knight to e5. Again, it's a very nice move. The idea is to clear the way for the rook to dominate the c file. Again, black has this open c file. We will definitely try to make use of that. In fact, this is one of the main themes of the dragon. There's this beautiful exchange sacrifice on c3, and that is a topic of our next video. So let's take a look at white's move. White goes with his approach h4. He wants to just create a non-stop caveman type of attack, a very direct attack on the black king with his pawn. So these are two different strategies working together. White is attacking with his pawns, whereas black on the other hand is attacking with his pieces. So he's attacking with all of his minor pieces, and soon his major pieces are going to come in the game, and this is going to be very dangerous. So it's a battle of pawns versus pieces, and generally pieces will dominate. So after h4, black plays queen to a5. There's a very real threat now of bishop takes on bishop takes on a2, winning a pawn and opening up the a file for the queen. That will be dangerous, and that's why white needs to defend that. Now the best move to defend that is to play a3, after which the game can continue with something like rook to b8 followed by b5 b4, or simply rook c8 rook b8 and then b5 b4. All of them are playable approaches, very nice approaches. But in the game, white made a mistake and he played king to b1. Okay, it looks very natural. The white king is defending this guy, the knight's defending this guy, everything looks safe. And this natural looking move is actually a big mistake. And just give yourself a few minutes, try to pause the video and find the excellent, brilliant combination that exists here. Alright, so I hope you have found the brilliant combination. This is time to crash through, just break all of defenses of white and just crash through his king. So, knight takes on f3. This is a brilliant move. We are breaking this pawn chain. We have completely destroyed the base of the pawn chain, that was f3 square, and our knight is now attacking the queen. So this has to be taken. And now here we go. We make another knight sacrifice. So it's two sacrifices, one after the other. The knight is attacking on c3 and the queen as well. Basically, once the queen moves, there is a very strong threat of knight takes on c3, and this would be almost terminal. This cannot be allowed, and white captures this, but this allows a very pretty checkmate in the end. Can you spot it? Yes, it's queen takes on a2 check, king goes on c1, and queen to a1 mate. Just take a look at our beautiful bishops over here. Just look at these beautiful bishops. They're just raging. This is a dragon bishop raging across the board. And that's the reason I like the dragon for so much, because it's so easy and the attack just flows in. You don't have to do much to get the attack in. It just explodes. So this was the first game. Let's take a look at our second game now. So here is our next example. Let's go forward with e4, c5. Again, we have seen this moves over and over again. So this is the open Sicilian, knight to c3 and g6. So we enter the dragon, bishop to e3. This is the Yugoslav setup, the most aggressive setup white usually employs against the dragon. Now bishop g7, fianchettoing the bishop, f3, castles. So we have already castled. You can see black is already ahead in development, and that's why he can get such a powerful quick attack. So queen to d2, knight to c6, castles. And in the last game we saw g4, like in this position we saw g4 happening, the idea of which was to prevent black from playing d5. In this one you see that white has just went ahead and castled, and this basically allows black to play d5, and d5 is actually the main move in this position. It's the theoretically best move, But there is also another way to play this position, which I very much like. Instead of playing d5, black can go in for this exchange in the center with knight takes on d4, bishop takes. Obviously, queen takes would be a grave mistake because of knight to g4. There's an open attack on the queen, and when the queen moves, we just take this bishop, and after that, our bishop on the long diagonal has no opposition at all. It will just absolutely dominate the board, and no one will be able to stop that bishop. Its counterpart is dead, and that's why this is generally assisted as completely winning for black. So let's go back. In this position, it's generally the bishop which captures, so bishop takes. And now, as there is no knight on d4, nobody is attacking the e6 square or the c6 square, and that's why bishop to e6 is possible. Our bishop now, again, we are getting our bishops on the ideal squares. Our bishop looks across the board, and now g4. So white again goes for his type of uh, Stonehenge approach. He just wants to just go ahead and kill the black king with all his pawns. He just wants to throw away all he has got. But again, this is like two different strategies. White is attacking with his pawns, whereas black is attacking with his pieces, and generally the attack with the pieces is much stronger. So queen to a5 is played this time. Again, the bishop attacks the pawn. The bishop attacks the pawn, the queen attacks the pawn, and this has to be defended. In this game, white does not play king to b1, which is a big mistake as we already saw, but rather he goes for a3. But there are the problems with this move. One of the ideas is you can play for b5, b4. I mean, after rook b8, you can play for b5, b4 and crack open this kingside position, and that would be very dangerous. But in this game, black first went for rook c8. Again, bringing the rook on the open file is very, very powerful. There can be chances for exchange sacrifices in the game. And this is where white already went wrong. In the last game, that was just one mistake by white, that was to play king b1, and he was lost. In this one as well, he played just one mistake. It was just one mistake and all over. So here he played bishop to e3, removing the bishop from this diagonal, from this diagonal, which means that our bishop on g7 has no one to oppose itself, and it can directly breathe fire on this diagonal. So here we go. Just pause the video, try to find the excellent combination that exists over here. Alright, so I hope you have found the brilliant knight takes on g4. The whole point of this knight sacrifice is open up the bishops. Yeah, open up the dragon bishop, breathe fire, and destroy the white king. So this has to be taken, and here we go. Bishop takes on c3, and white already resigned in this position. So why did he resign? Let's take a look at this. If queen takes, then obviously after rook takes, just let's make it on the board. After rook takes, this is an absolutely disgraceful position. All of his pawns are misplaced. The bishop's hanging, his king is naked, and this is completely lost for him. He would not last long in this position. So what happens if the pawn takes? Now we have a basic beginner's checkmate. So check over here, we can follow this check, and finally the same kind of checkmate that as we saw in the last game is queen a1 mate. Yeah, it was so simple. White just made one mistake, and all we have to do was open up our bishops, open up our dragon bishop that breathes fire, and that was all. We just destroyed white completely. So these were two beautiful miniatures that I really like in the dragon. There are so many more, but we will cover most of them in the next videos. In the next video, my topic will be exchange sacrifice, the thematic exchange sacrifice. It's a very important topic. So stay tuned for the next video, and thank you for watching. Bye.